Well, good afternoon, Tranya friends, and welcome back to Patio Ponderings. Happy New Year. It's so good to be back with you. We are well into January already and back into the routine of things. So happy to be here. So this week, we did a reading. We did a couple readings this past week, one in John, but we also spent a good amount of time in the book of Micah. And the core verse that we worked out of in Micah, because we were using the image of childbirth, is this one. Writhe and scream, daughter Zion, like a woman in labor. That's just part of the verse. So I'm wondering if you've had that experience, or if this was your experience on Sunday, when you're sitting in worship in the sanctuary and you're hearing the liturgist read, or you're hearing me read, or maybe you're even reading along, and you hear a verse like this and you think, who is daughter Zion? I think that would be a fair question. Daughter Zion is a name we run across with some regularity in the Old Testament, but not so much in the New Testament. So it might be very unfamiliar to us. And even if we have heard it before, we are maybe unsure of just who this daughter Zion is. So that's what I've been thinking about this week. So let's figure this out. So let's pick it apart a little bit. First, let's talk about Zion. The place Zion has evolved, or the image of Zion as a place has evolved quite a bit throughout Scripture. So in the beginning, Zion was a specific place. I need to get my words back. It's a specific place, often called Mount Zion. It eventually evolved into being a reference for the city of Jerusalem. Now remember, the city of Jerusalem is the home of the temple. The temple is where God resides. And so that connotation of Zion as being the place where God resides is folded into that image. And then it extends to all of Israel. When we get into the New Testament then, and we hear the writers talk about Zion, what we're hearing about is this fulfillment of God's vision of a new heaven and a new earth, a new Jerusalem, and what that will look like and what that will be like. Okay, so if Zion is kind of this place/concept, then who is daughter Zion? Guess what? That's us. Daughter Zion is a way of referring to God's people. Now in the Old Testament, of course, that's the Israelites. But in the New Testament, when we think of who all will be living into this fulfillment of God's vision for us, that's us. So let's think about this a minute. Let's ponder this. The personification of God's people is a daughter. The personification of God's people is female. Is that a new concept for you? Yeah. So what does that mean? Well, it tells us a lot about God's relationship with God's people, with us. God views us as a daughter, as a beloved child. Now for me, this really resonates with me. This is particularly meaningful because I grew up as a daddy's girl. I loved hanging out with my dad. I loved to do things with him. We had a lot in common. There's a lot of ways that we are alike. And so this idea of kind of us being a daddy's girl for God, that's pretty meaningful. It's pretty special. But perhaps if you're a daughter or a father of a daughter and that relationship is not so great, maybe it's a little harder to wrap your head around. So what do you think? What feelings, what emotions come up in you when you think of God's people personified in female terms? Let's start with that question. And what do you think? How do you imagine God's love for us then when you think of our relationship as a father-daughter relationship? Interesting things to think about. Maybe they're new things for you to think about. As always, though, I would love to hear what you have to say. Have a great rest of your week. We'll see you on Sunday. Bye.